couple days ago, I was listening to RFK talk about times in his life when he was shooting heroin and doing all this crazy stuff. And I was thinking, there's not many people around that can tell that story, that got away from that stuff and came back and did amazing things in the Word of God. Seemed to bring them back, both of you. Right. So how about that? That's nothing to be ashamed of, man.
I'm not. I used to be real bold and like, hey, look, I used to did all this stuff. And but now I see my son. I'm like, hey, and the one thing with him, that's why I say this, because if I ever mention, because I have tons of stories I would tell, and my son was like, hey, Dad, you didn't tell me about that. And so our thing is always been like, if I want to say something, I let him know first. So he doesn't want to hear it. Right. He wants to hear it first.
Exactly.
And so I'm like, so when I'm like, I have a lot of, I'm like, hey, I don't know if I told you about this about my life, but I'm going to bring this up. So do you know about this? He's like, yeah, you did it. Or no, I don't know all of that story. I'm like, okay, well, here's this part of it. So whenever I'm like thinking about things I'm going to talk about, especially from when I preach or speak from in front of groups, I always kind of, it's his way of letting me know, like, hey, I'm first, and so I love it. I'm like, you're absolutely right, son. You are. You're first. He's in 20s in college now, so and I still the same way. He's like, he's okay with sharing it as long as he knows. It's not a surprise to him.
Right.
He doesn't want. I don't want to hear from anybody else. I want to hear from you.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
So which is pretty cool. So I do. My son is an incredible young man. Like I said, he's very special, loves God, and smart kid. And so when I do talk about things, I think about that. I'm like, does he know about this?
Right.
And so before, so I'm like, hey, I got to tell you before this goes.
There's
up.
things that you can say, and there's things that you can't. This coming July will be 40 years sobriety off of alcohol for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
And my kids know all the stupid things. They all know, getting in fights and, hassling by the cops and all that stuff. But there's also stuff that not going to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
There's and they know I'm pretty transparent about things. There's not too much I won't share.
Sure.
There's really
Exactly.
And I just I've learned, especially with God and the enemy, if you're able to put those things out there, those things can no longer be a shame that the enemy tries to use against you. And so if you say it, then like, what else you got on me? So I put some things out there that I'm like, oh, I really said that.
It might hurt me later.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, geez. But the more I've done that, I feel the more it's resonated with people.
Sure.